Hello, everybody, and welcome to the MTEA EDI Focus Group Series. It is Tuesday, April 1st, 2025, and we are here today to talk to some really amazing panelists about what do we do in this moment? What does DEI mean? How do we avoid compassion burnout? And how are we taking care of ourselves and each other in this absolutely crazy moment in our country's history? So my name is Gwen Walker. I'm the VP of EDI for MTEA, and I am also an associate professor of theater at the University of Pennsylvania. So if we could popcorn around and introduce ourselves, and then we'll start our conversation. How about you go first, David?
Hey everyone, great to share space with you all today. I am an assistant professor in the voice department here at Berklee College of Music in Boston, where I teach musical theater, acting skills, singing pedagogy, theater history, things like that. And I'm also on faculty at Emerson College, also in Boston, up the road, where I teach voice as well, but specifically Linklater voice for our acting human beings over there. And I also teach a theater aesthetics course there too.
Nice. Marty.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marty Austin Lamar. I am an assistant professor in the Department of Theater and Dance at California State University, Fullerton. I'm also the co-coordinator there of the musical theater BFA program.
Marc.
Hi, folks. Marc Miller, associate professor in the Department of Landscape Architecture at Penn State University.
Terrific. So I'm gonna kick it off. What does DEI mean in this almost post-DEI moment? How do we meet it? What do we do? What are your thoughts? I know, big questions.
I mean, I can speak for myself. I know what I'm not doing. I'm not going to freak out. I'm not going to get bogged down. I'm going to be careful about how I expense my energy to include protests, walkouts, all of those things. I'm going to mind my fiscal life. That's my money. I'm going to be aware of how things could possibly impact me, but understand that in some ways those impacts are temporary. And so, you know, we have definitely been here before, particularly persons of African descent. This is not a new moment. It's a new moment for those that are privileged enough to make a choice and decided to choose to vote for a political system that is caused so much upheaval that what they forgot was that many of the people that are most affected by what they're doing are the people from their very party that look like them, that vote like them, that share faith in the ways they share faith. And so, you know, I'm gonna continue to do what I was taught to do, which is to press on, as my father would say.
Yeah, I vibrate so much to what Marty is saying here. Those of us who have relationship with how the political system and how society happens in this country, and especially when you are a Black-bodied individual in this country, this moment doesn't feel new. It feels like it's funny because my mother, of course, who's much older than I am, she's 73 or so. Her and my aunts and uncles after this election were talking, and it was this moment of like not much needed to be said. It was a collective we've been here before. Told you so.
Yep.
So I think with a lot of folks who look like myself and who grew up in communities with other people who look like me, there is this collective like, okay, here we are again. And what we tend to do is, like Marty said, press on, and that's what's giving me hope. One thing that I think too is this, I describe this moment and what's happening with diversity, equity, inclusion work as to the bone exhausting. And in Linklater work, we often, we're often talking about the bones as as a source of resonance, et cetera, et cetera. And in that, I'm practicing that work and taking care of my body.
Yeah.
My like I'm going on a date with myself every week. I'm going to the movies by myself, or treating myself to the things that feel delicious, that pour into me, that pour into David as the human, so that I can fuel whatever energy or whatever substance that needs to be sparked on the inside of me to fight, and whatever fight looks like, or whatever a moment of rebellion looks like. So I'm leaning into more somatic practices that care for me, right? Talking to my family more, calling up random friends and being like, oh, hey, how you doing? How your mama doing? Right? Let's just kiki for a little bit. And it seems small, but in the practice, it's felt like big impact for me, where I can press on. Because that one of the purposes of this chaotic system we're in now feels like to deplete our energy, to beat us down spiritually, mentally, emotionally, so that we acquiesce and we go, okay, this is what it is. So that's one of the things I'm doing: somatic practice and physical taking care of myself, getting 8 hours of sleep, drinking the water I need.
If you're comfortable doing so, I would love it if we could just leave our mics open, like we're all sitting in a room together in this
Okay.
weird Zoom environment. I love it when the conversation feels like we're together and overlaps a little bit. That's okay. Marc.
I would not use the word press. That's not a word that was in my house. In my house, it was roll. Roll with the punches, right? So I'm rolling with the punches. I am being more straightforward with what I'm dealing with, what we're all dealing with. It just the need to be gentle is not something I necessarily feel as much right now, because you're here with me now, or you're here with us, and now you get to experience it. Wasn't a place you're in before. Welcome. So they need to have that folks need to have that realization in order for them to digest and process where everyone is right now and what those relationships are. I've been trying to learn how to, so last year was the year of saying no. This year is the year of letting go. Don't ask me how that's working out. But I'm trying to learn from colleagues, some really, really amazing people. Not necessarily, oh, they do fantastic stuff, just the way they're being present now. I'm trying to learn from them how to manage and cope and be present for other folks. And while also by making a room or a space with short phrases and terms. But then letting that happen, and then letting people understand that in those few words, they have to take more of that space on for themselves.
Yeah, I feel very much what you're saying, Mark, around um and forgive me if I'm miswording it, but being direct with people around what's happening for me and the boundaries that I might need to set up on any given day. Right. And I'm also doing that with students. And I think in our work, I was saying this to my therapist. As a Black-bodied individual teaching where I teach, a lot of my students in any given semester are predominantly white and come from different backgrounds, right? And a lot of the spaces I perform in are predominantly white. A lot of my clients are predominantly white. And there's an exhaustion in holding space and taking care of other bodies and other spirits, which and what am I trying to say? It's I don't know. There's just an exhaustion that I have that sometimes can feel in sacrifice to my own taking care of my Black body, my Black sisters and brothers who are like my blood brothers, right? Like, so it almost feels like in a lot of my professional life, I'm caretaker in that way. And I have found a lot of I don't know, a lot of taking care of my own self and being direct with my students and say, this is a boundary today. This is what's going on for me today. And I'm not sure that I can hold space for you in this way, right? Yeah.
The things that came up from the people in MTEA that when we were discussing this on the executive committee about what we were going to talk about, were the whole idea for this came about because there are places where people work where they're not allowed to use the words equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And the request came through to me, the VP of EDI, to ask if we would consider changing the name of this position so that people who worked at one of those institutions could run for this office. And y'all, not everybody in this room knows the history. Marty does, but we fought very hard to make this an equitable organization. And I think I had a large reaction to that, which was, yes, if you apply for the position and you get elected, then we'll work with you, but I'm not going to preemptively do anything. And I don't think we should preemptively do anything, but I would love to hear what you think about that and what your thoughts on that particular problem would be, but also what's going on at where you work. Like what is happening with EDI initiatives? What is your college telling you? What is your university telling you? What's the temperature where you are about these issues right now?
I was at an event on Thursday with an amazing colleague and friend, and now artistic director of one of the notable theaters in Los Angeles. And a similar question came up, and I'm going to say the same thing. To hell with all the acronyms. I'm sick of them. I'm over it. To me, DEI is the easy way of responding to purebred American pie racism. And so I wonder what would happen if people really allowed you, Gwen, to call your office what it really is, which is the vice president of, let me make sure that we are not using and practicing racism. caveat here is that these same privileged, typically white, cisgendered white men forgot that the people that benefit most from any program aimed at balancing a playing field are white women.
Yep.
Are not Black women. They are not Black men, even though Black women are the most educated population in these United States, right? Even though enslaved Africans built the very platforms that they stand on to spit out, to share, and to celebrate what is as American as apple pie, and that is racism. So when you put me in BIPOC, I have a problem with that. I don't respond to it. Because then you say that Black people or persons of African descent, because to me, race is a construct. Black people of African descent, indigenous people, our Hispanic, Latino communities, even our Asian communities, on and on and on and on and on. You say that our stories are the same, and they are not, particularly as it concerns these United States of America. That right now, today they released a video of, what's that man, RFK in Wisconsin. And I tried to find any kind of diverse representation of children on the stage with him, and there was very limited representation. And so I am exhausted by it, and I stand with my brothers where I'm very clear about my boundaries. And this semester they kind of, it was a it was a wonderful mishap where I had to, I agreed to teach the musical theater history course. And I was very clear. I said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Are you sure?" I said, because the history of musical theater is not that it is just the original art form, that this is the only art form that belongs here. But the expanded story that we don't talk about is that it was built on the shoulders of racism. That its foundation is rooted in legislation that would consider the three men on this, in this moment, these three strong, powerful, educated, cis, queer representatives of a version of masculinity, femininity, we could keep going on, but that we would be considered 1/5 of a human being. That is the foundation of musical theater. That the very means for people that look like us to make money was to go a step further and burn cork, paint your face black, and red your lips, white your eyes, and talk about Sambo and Jim Crow. And what they don't realize is that we live in the minstrel show every single damn day. We live in it every day. And every day we show grace, we show kindness, we show respect, because that's how we've been raised in some ways. But that's also a form of protest in my mind as well. Showing up in joy is a form of protest, right? But there comes a time when we get exhausted by trying to make everybody else feel good through an acronym. Okay, you're an ally. What does that mean? Because if you say it means that I celebrate and walk with BIPOC people, then I would question your allyship, because you don't see me, you see an acronym. LGBTQIA+. I'm like, how many more letters are we going to add to it? Before you just allow humans to be humans, man.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yep. As you can tell, it really gets me fired up, because this is what we're teaching the students. This is how we're training a new generation. They are not going to be concerned with the political system because it does not work for them. It does not support them. So why would they vote? Right now in the state of Florida, an area that the current leadership won by 30 points, right? He is now down to this particular race, this Senate race, the separation margin is now 8 points in favor of the Republican Party, right? but the numbers are still the numbers. What does that mean? It means that people are fed up. That
Sure.
people have to.
Yep.
What we expect is to see this resurgence of the civil rights movement, and I ain't marching. I'm not doing it because we had the right person in the position. And even if I didn't agree with everything that she stood for, what I did understand was that she stood for everybody on this screen, and they will continue to talk about the price of eggs. And if I really thought it was about eggs, then I would have voted for said orange man myself. But it was not about eggs. It was about the fact that she showed up in all of her ethnic beauty, and the only thing she had to offer this country were the facts. The only person running for that office who was more prepared, more on paper available for that level of work was another woman that they decided not to allow into that position.
Yep.
So I'm done with acronyms. I'm done with all of them because they have only, in my opinion, set us back. And if we would call a thing, we'd be much further along. Instead of saying, put a DEI office in your PWI Ivy League institution, let's just simply say that this institution not only celebrated, but was expanded and has benefited from racism, specific towards enslaved Africans and their descendants.
I want to take your class, Marty. No.
It can be, as I'm sure you all would agree, it can be exhausting because there are few of us. But you know what continues to happen? Come in class after they've done the reading, they've done the assignments, and they all say the same thing. Yo, prof, I just didn't know. I had no.
Well, and to that point, right, what's interesting about this whole, right, that's in musical theater history, right? When you think about contemporary music, you don't have contemporary music without Black folk, right?
Yeah.
You don't have any of that flavor, any of what we sort of think about as American music, what's quintessentially American without Black DNA, right? And I love this what Marty is saying around acronyms, because I often think this too, and I've thought this for a long time, just like, my dad would say, call a duck, and a spade, right? What is it? Is the anti-racism office, right? Or we're against you being terrible to people office, right? One term that comes to mind though, because I'm also am sensitive, right? And I know we all are sensitive for depending on where people are and where they're teaching, it can be more or less dangerous to be it's a super active rebellion for the four of us to be on this call and right, because who knows if the Doge people are here secretly being like, oh, they're talking about DEI, let's see where they work, and then let's get them canceled. But I think about what's her name, amazing, legendary Black actor, educator, Anna Devere Smith. And I don't think this is her term. I think it's from someplace else, but I know of this term from her work. And she talks about this idea of radical hospitality, right? And I love it because it's like, she uses this idea of throwing a party. If I'm throwing a party and I'm saying, oh, I'm inviting my friends, Gwen, Marty, and Marc to this party, do I just invite you to the party and just assume like, oh, okay, what I have here, y'all are good, your creature comforts are great, and we're gonna have a party? Or have I thought so hard and carefully and meticulously about, okay, what is Gwen like? What might Gwen need? I'm sort of looking at each of you individually and asking these questions around like, oh, what might make them comfortable? Oh, I know Gwen likes Pepsi. Oh, I'm gonna have all five types of Pepsi. so Gwen, can just have the pick of the litter, right? I know Marc likes apple pie, so I'm gonna have these 10 different apple pies from the 10 different apple pie stores in Boston. And I'm thinking in all of these ways so that when you three come to my party, there's no question in your mind around whether you feel welcome,
Yep.
whether you feel thought about, and you feel like you can belong and stay there for a while. And not only feel like you can belong, but can I actually sigh relief and surrender into, I'm here. Yeah, David thought about all these aspects of me, and I feel like, yes, this is a party for me. And I can sort of let layers of myself be exposed and be vulnerable in the way that is really delicious to be human with other people. So maybe for those friends who are like, well, what else could we call it? Maybe it's the Office of Radical Hospitality. I don't know, because it feels like that, right? To Marty's point, it's in the historical record. Anytime there's legislation, there's policy that's here to benefit Black folks, is benefiting everybody else. And to Marty's point, particularly those folks who sometimes are on the front line saying, we know none of this.
I recently had to rewrite a scholarship for Black and brown students in landscape architecture. So Black and brown students would have access to the scholarship because there are certain institutions that were explicitly saying to their faculty, you cannot support this award because it focuses on certain people. So I had to open it up and rewrite it, which was a really difficult thing for me to do, knowing what could happen and also what, fundamentally what it means, the have or have not, right? But in the end, I ended up rewriting it. But then at the same time, I was very clear in the expectations. This was like one of my farewell things to this organization. I was very clear in the expectations and saying it's based off of a person, or it's named for a person who was doing the work of increasing diversity in the discipline. And if that person were alive today, he would be doing the work of an anti-racist. If that person meets those goals in the spirit of that person who was African-American, great. But it makes it very difficult for people to understand that perspective and really understand how that work, how they relate to that work if they're not coming from those households. So made that change and then made it very clear to the rest of the board. I made this change to open it up for people like you who can't advertise. So your students have access to it. That does not mean that it's just for anybody. And that doesn't mean that you can make it work. And the language is written and prepared in a way that you need to be mindful of. The scholarship is not just to give someone an award for being a person of color. It's because they're trying to do anti-racist work as well. Because we can't just sit here, to the point of acronyms, we can't sit here and just say, oh, we've given you an award, congratulations. They have to do more. Otherwise, we don't move.
I find it so interesting, Marc, that you are leading in a field that at one point was considered to be the only way that people of African descent could take care of themselves. And it was not by their own desire. It's because someone forced them to. And this goes back to that old conversation between Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver.
Mm-hmm.
Goes back to that. Where should we?
That's exactly it.
What's in our hands and where should our hands be? And I find it very interesting that here we go again now. My grandmother was one of the greatest gardeners I ever knew. Could make the deadest of the deadest plants come back. Miss her every single, and I miss her every single day because she was a woman who consistently was told what she could not do.
Mm-hmm.
Had she lived to see her grandchildren, what she wanted to see us all graduate high school, and she did, and she got to see some of us graduate college, right? And why was that important to her? It's because she never had the opportunity.
Yep.
But somehow she could sew anything. My mom to this day, anything I've ever wanted to do in art and fashion, anything else, is because that's the DNA that runs in my body. My mother, her green thumb, that's not because she went and spent a lot of time in a school to do that. She saw it happening. She knows what it means to take care. So for you to deny the very people that have maintained that, you have to walk by them to get to your office, and you mean to tell me they are not worthy of funding that is specific to their, it's because it's not about saying one deserves it more than the other. It's about saying that culturally, this culture has been left out of the conversation around education. Here's an opportunity to ensure that not that they get a leg up, but they just get basic access. Basic access. And I find it really interesting that day in and day out, this is what the three of us, the four of us, are having to manage. How do I talk about not offend anybody? Or how do I, well, I don't try anymore. I don't try anymore. Because you cannot have the kinds of conversations we're having and someone in their privilege not be offended.
And I think, sorry, Mark, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, please.
And you advocating for all of us to take care of ourselves. To that end, I think, which is why I have found so delicious these David dates, these personal, because it feels like a reclamation. It feels like I'm taking back some of my joy. I'm taking care of me. Because to your point, Marty, I forget who it was, the gentleman who wrote My Grandmother's Hands, this wonderful book, which elements of it talks about how what we're talking about in this conversation is in our DNA. Not just Black folks in this country, white folks in this country, brown folks in this country. If you have any experience, any life you've lived in this country, especially from an early age, like this stuff is in our DNA. And to that end, this exhaustion is in our DNA. So it's almost like a metaphorical IV injection of anti-racism where I'm like, oh, okay, these 3 hours on Monday, I'm going to the spa. Nobody called me, nobody emailed me. It's just David taking care of David, taking care of this DNA. Or I'm going to the movies, or I'm gonna cook myself this decadent dinner, or whatever the case may be. And it seems that small practice, I feel like that's one of the things we still have. What are the small, mundane practices we all have that delight us, that feel delicious to us? And I think that's finding more and more of those practices as a main part of our lives in this day and age. Because I think, Marty, you said it earlier, it's temporary. We know that from the historical record too, right? We'll have 4 or 5 years of this chaos, and then you know, there's going to be a changeover, and hopefully, you know, a great a better changeover. But it's sort of like, oh, okay, this is going to change in some way. This is going to change in some way 4 years from now. So how do we rest up? How do we pour back into ourselves in this time of like chaos and anarchy? I'm just really curious. I ask myself that, and am asking myself that every day, because I don't always have the answer. Because on those days where I can't do a David date, it's like, okay, this is a 12-hour teaching day. How I'm gonna have some French fries. I love French fries, and I usually try not to have them, but today I'm gonna go and get some greasy French fries.
Mhm,
And it
mhm.
seems so like, really, really, bro. In this
Hey,
moment, French fries are
hey.
gonna help you. But there's
Yes.
an element of that where it's like, yeah, it it helps me in
French
these
fries,
5 minutes.
yeah.
I
I,
go.
I do a lot of teaching with food because it throws people off, and then you can pull them into a conversation they wouldn't necessarily have. I had at one point I don't advise PhD students, but I had a student who was really, really flustered. And I said, have you ever tried Korean barbecue potato chips from Canada, particular brand? I have not. Come to my office.
Marc is
Sat down.
famous for
It's a trick, right? Pulled them in, started talking to them. They ate the bag, but they also got a whole lot of other stuff out.
Yeah.
And I reminded them, you just ate a bag of potato chips, so clearly you were not okay, right? But then it also allows for me to you tell those stories around food, right? So you're sharing at the same time and creating community and connections. Because I won't do that for just anybody. There are a handful of organizations, a handful of people I'll do that for because they matter. The rest of you, you can get your own chips.
Ah,
Yo, it's true. Like, get your own.
Get
No,
your
I
own.
don't want to go to Starbucks with you. I don't want you rubbing my back. I don't need you to give me a hug of solid. Like, I don't need any of that. Actually, when you show up that way for me, that lets me know that you are not clear. You're not
Right.
clear that way.
Yep.
I would you come and talk to me about improving the condition for students of color, and you coming
Right.
to talking about, did you see what happened today? I don't need to see it to know what's happening.
Right.
The other thing that people,
Right.
anybody that will go as far as to say, if you use DEI, we're going to shut down any institution that is not grounded in celebrating America. So you take aim at the Smithsonian. What that should indicate to people is the amount of fear. The fear that is there.
Mhm.
One of the most exciting things I've heard all week was that they're doing a reboot of A Different World. Educator, A Different World for me, my siblings, my cousins, my friends. It's why all of us wanted to go to an HBCU and find Whitley, Dwayne, Freddie, Jaleesa, Mr. Gaines.
Hopefully with the same theme song.
Okay.
That theme song was tight.
When Aretha started singing it, and Aretha sang the theme song for then 5 seasons, and Boyz II Men took it over. You know what got that show canceled? Was it because people started watching it? It's because Debbie Allen said that we're going to talk about the LA riots. We're going to make an episode about it. And that's how we're going to start the 6th and final season. You think they came to work knowing they were going to cancel that show? No. But did that stop the movement from going forward? No. So now in this reboot, I can only imagine the kind of chaos that's in the writing room, and they're like, where do we start? We have so much.
Right.
But the fact that it's rooted in culture, it will shift if they really go through it, it will do what it did when we were coming up. College enrollment improved, medical doctors improved, the number of lawyers grew, the number of people college professors grew, the number of people of color that wanted to be in the military. All of those things expanded because representation matters. So when you get rid of all the representation, you're also getting rid of financial contributions in this country, and they have not thought this through. And the people that lost their jobs, many of them were your neighbors. They were your wives. They were your brothers. They all believed in the same way I believed that Hillman was a real school. They really believed that at the core of America, the biggest concern was the price of eggs. Are you kidding me, man? Come on.
Yep.
And so now we have to go to school and figure out, how do we offer balance to students that have grown up in a very imbalanced world. They're barely over COVID. And now the first time that many of them get to vote, this is the outcome. So yeah, I'll be eating 2 bags of chips. And the last thing is I had a student come in just last week to pour into me. Didn't even know I needed it. Didn't know. But as they were exiting my office, because we took care of their situation, they came back in to say, I hope you know, Professor, that for us POCs in this department, we trust you and we appreciate how you rock for us. Now, instinctively, I wasn't aware that that's what I was doing. I thought I was just showing up, right? But what does that signal? It signals that they know the difference when that's not happening.
Right.
David's students know what it means when he's not there. Marc's students know what it means if he wasn't there. Gwendolyn, your students know the differences that would be happening if you were not there. And then what I don't like is that my impact, our impact is not limited to Black students. Want to be seen, heard, regarded, and cared for. And they understand, many understand that just because of the journey I've had to have in higher education as being the only often, that I have a connection to that experience in ways that my colleagues will never understand, nor have to. And so it meant something to hear that. It meant something to hear that. And that was protest. They didn't have to say that to me.
Yeah.
I have a very incendiary question, but being myself, I'm going to ask it. The people who are raising alarm and panicking and are mostly cis white folks, and I in protecting my own energy, my inclination in this moment is to step back from my leadership positions.
Not all of them.
Yes, sir. Not all of them. But I would love to hear, like, I do this because I know my privilege and I know my power and I know that I can do good. And I feel like that's why I'm on the planet. And on the other hand, I'm weary. And so this compassion burnout thing that we talk about, I when people are running in like Chicken Little and saying the sky is falling, I'm just like, well, the sky fell. You know, it's never been up there actually. Like it's so like Like, how do you continue to, I don't know, I guess I already asked that question. When is it time? When is it time to step away from the work?
I feel like when it's too much. And I hate to, it's like, sometimes I say things and my students look at me and they're like, bro, that wasn't profound. And truly, to me, it feels like, okay, we know ourselves. And in this idea, because I've really been thinking about this compassion burnout a lot, just a lot. As we know, long teaching hours, and as I said earlier, that my clients, my students tend to sway a certain way, and it is exhausting. And I know, right, just like in my syllabi, right, with the attendance policy, I sort of say, you all get one. You get one day where you don't have to tell me why. Whether you want to call it a mental health day or I need to take care of me day. Yep. You get a day, you get one where you can step away. And I wonder what it's like for us at our institutions and in our work to have that for ourselves. What does that look like? Every week on Wednesday afternoon, I take a mental health day, or I take a step away day. Because and I'm not saying you're suggesting this in your question, Gwendolyn, but does stepping away have to be when it gets too big and I choose to step away? Can it be a practice? Can I sort of say, every day I need a step away moment, right? Like I hate to say it, like a cigarette break or a bathroom break. Every day I need to take my afternoon constitutional, right?
Well, I don't mean to say that my coffee. I don't mean to say that my experience is commensurate with y'all's. I don't mean that. I guess my question is more in when you've been fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting and don't feel anything move in front of you, and you just keep doing the work and keep doing the work. At some point, what I've started to do this year is just take care of my community in a deeper, more profound way. The people right here who I can touch and cook for, that's my thing. If I make food for people and love them and get together with them and look at them across a table, that's what I feel I can do in this moment.
Sure. Yeah. And I guess I didn't get and mean to suggest you were saying your experience was commensurate with ours. I guess the other thing I'd offer here, I'm a preacher's kid, so that's a layer of me that comes to the table. And I think about the parable where Jesus is said to have said, right? The lesson is, okay, once you've spoken enough about the thing, you've taken the message to the people, and you've told them on the doorstep, you told them in the morning, you told them at night. At some point, I sent the message, they're not accepting the message, and it says brush the dust off your feet or something like this and move on. And in that, the lesson, right? Yeah, yes. The lesson that I get there is we can't reach and change everybody, whether we are Black bodies doing this work, white bodies doing this work, brown bodies doing this work, right? To the point we've been making in this, right? Part of this conversation is that racism and this country's relationship and sort of like coddling and holding on to that racism is in the DNA, is American as apple pie. So there are just going to be communities and people who we're never going to reach. And I love this idea or love this practice of pouring into your community, right? Because not only does it pour into your community, I feel like it's reciprocal. Your folks, your humans, the humans in my life who I love the most, it's always when I pour into them, I get immediate pour back into me.
Absolutely, yep. Um,
I was going to interrupt to say, then pass to you, Mark. I only wanted to say that Nicole Brewer taught me that, David, what you just said in a different way, but the fabulous Nicole, who's the, teaches the theater anti-racist training. Somebody asked her when I was in there with her, what do I do about my colleague who I can't seem to make care about this? She said, I only teach the willing. I don't have time for that.
That's it. That is
like
it.
that's
I put that
curriculum
right in
too,
my
basic
heart. I was like,
curriculum.
thank you.
Yeah.
Right, Mark. Right.
You know, that's basic. Even if it's something as simple as I teach construction documents, how you put together drawings so a contractor will understand your goals. Some of them just want to put down basic concrete and nothing special. That's fine. I'm not going to work any harder to make you do more. If you want to do something simple, that's your life. If you want to really figure out how you can make something that people will really stare at and pause and look at and think twice, we can talk. But I'm not going to try and pull you up because I don't have the time for it.
Right.
But during the first question, I was thinking about a person at a conference who the usual exchange is, how are you? How are you? And they said they were feeling sad with all the terrible things that were happening now. And I just paused and looked at them and they, so how are you? And I was like, I'm business as usual. And they were a little confused and said, well, just because it's out loud now doesn't mean it hasn't always been this way.
Right.
And I walked away. And that moment of sort of setting that boundary and saying, I don't have to teach you all the things you think you need to know, made me realize how much more I had in the tank that I could give to someone else. Right? So we have more than we think. It's just that we're giving it out to a lot of people. But the more you set those boundaries, the more you have to give to the people who are really, really important to you.
I was doing this thing a couple of weeks ago called the Dream Lab. I'm clearly the oldest one in the Dream Lab, but it was just so empowering to be with folks that are in their late 20s, and you had mid 30s, and then you had those of us that were in our 40s. And what was consistent in all of these all of these generations of people in these decades of life was the need for joy. Joy is it is the best form of protest. Joy does not intoxicate me in the ways that would harm my body. The intoxication from joy, it's all beneficial to my heart, my mind, my body, my spirit. And you saying that you were PK, David. I'm not a preacher's kid, but my daddy might as well be, so pastor up in the choir rehearsal, baby. So we were always there.
Of course.
The thing that I always heard, but I don't think I really understood until, I mean, I understood it, but I don't know if I practiced it until I got into my 40s, was faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things that I cannot see. So while I'm sitting here beating my brain about DEI, there are people having a margarita.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say it's sort of, I look for whispers from the divine. And that's so, I love that you said that, because that was my dad's favorite scripture. He called himself a faith preacher, and he's no longer with us. So it feels right. that you dropped that in here. And speaking to that, I think of a song that we used to sing in the choir at church. Joy. That's what it's called. And it says, I come that you might have life more abundantly. Yeah. I come that you might have life through eternity. And it's like, to live in abundant joy. What does that mean? I don't have to be religious or spiritual to sort of practice that, but what does it mean to find abundant joy and to make that a part of my practice that pours into myself?
Everybody's saying, am I gonna, the musical Gypsy with the phenomenal, let's just, we don't have to talk about how phenomenal that cast is. But I said to somebody, I said, I don't know if I can sit through it and not become anxious. Watching all of this beautiful talent on stage, and watching them navigate a story that is not specific to any culture. All of us go through what that mother is going through in some way. At the end of the day, she will do whatever it takes to support, to elevate, raise her children at any cost. So I said to somebody, but there's a little difference when you put a Black woman specifically on that stage in that period in vaudeville, having fight for her life and her children's lives. And I said, I don't know if right now is the best moment for me to see that, because I don't know if I can go and sit and enjoy the experience in joy. And that's what people have to determine for themselves. And that's what's not happening. Instead of you determining what brings you joy, we determine all the things that bring us pain, and that's what we live through. And this is stuff that I'm dealing with right now, where I am being very careful about what I watch, who I listen to, the music I listen to, who gets my energy. And I'm in production right now, so that's a little different, because we all come and you're kind of forced to kind of build a community as you're working on a project. But what we determined today was that what all of us needed was consistent joy. That's what we need.
Yep.
And then our intimacy work we were doing, the one thing she said was, listen, everybody knows how to check in, but most of us never check out. I said, and I literally was like, in my mind, you better preach, because I am going to check out. I'm checking out.
Yep.
When I call my mom and my daddy, I don't want to talk about that. Now, inevitably we do, right? But I want to see the wisdom of parents that remember what it felt like to walk to a water fountain and it not work because it was the Negro fountain. I want to celebrate the fact that my grandfather, who I never met, died when my mom was 16. That my mother survived that tragedy. She saw my grandfather lose life at 16. And somehow, 2 years later, she was able to go to Delaware State on a full scholarship. She had 3 kids and got her master's. That somehow my father, in the midst of all of that, was able to go to school, Fort Valley State, and HBCU. Both of them are graduates of HBCUs. And now to know in 2025 that my niece and my nephew might not have the opportunity to go to HBCU because these people are saying that is a form of racism. The HBCU was not constructed because we just got up one day and were like, we want to build schools. No, it's because you wouldn't let us in any of the schools that are represented on this screen. So what are we to do? We practice resilience. We found joy in laying bricks. Mary McLeod Bethune found joy in using the last dollars that she had to build a place and a space where we could go and be educated. That's still joy in the midst of all of that stuff, man. My parents still have unspeakable joy. Some days I'm like, I don't know how. They have unspeakable joy. My grandparents had unspeakable joy. My grandmother was just a few years out of being enslaved herself. Sharecropper. So in many ways, she, let's just call it what it is, but they still found a way to build houses. My grandparents still found a way. And that does not happen because you sit around worrying about the woes. It happens because you said, in spite of the woes, I'm still gonna have joy. And so that's how we navigate a time like this. That's all we have, man. That's all we.
And I hear in those stories too, it's like we can learn a lot from those older people, because that's how they got through it, right? When we think about the enslaved folks, right? Sunday was not only a time for church, but it was a time for, let's get together and have a good time, and let's laugh, let's cook a meal, let's commune, let's have joy, abundant joy with each other, right? Let's practice this thing, right? And to your point, Marty, right? Ultimate rebellion. And that's how they survived, right? Those 300 plus years. Of course, there are other ways in which they survive, but that's one of the deep practices. And I to this conversation, I think joy is a practice. Joy is something in our work and in our world that we have to very deliberately schedule and very deliberately make happen for ourselves in a consistent way. And I think that's the time now we're in. Joy with myself. How do I radiate joy to the folks, right?
Yes.
My people, because everybody don't deserve that from me, you know.
No.
Marc, do you have any closing thoughts? We do have to wrap. Give you some room.
No, I think joy is it, right? And how you create community or family. I have intentionally stopped using the words colleagues to make it very clear that we are a community and we have to talk with each other, and it's more than being just professional. We share in each other's lives, and you can be there if you want. You can be there with me if you want, but if you don't, that says a lot. And we have an understanding at that point. But we can't walk around using language that's business as usual, because it's not business as usual right now. It's more obvious, right?
Yeah, I had to stop using the word colleague because I felt like I was giving people too much privilege. You know, you're not even, because at the root of that, the CO means co. That means with. Like, thank you for saying that, Marc. I needed to be reminded. I needed to be reminded. Thank you for saying that, David. Joy, I needed to be reminded. I needed to be reminded.
So
and thank you, because you keep me quiet.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt, Marty. Say that.
I was just saying thank you, because you keep. One of the most exciting things I've heard this evening is you saying, I'm taking a step back. You know, people, they don't deserve it all. They do not deserve it. And when it's all said and done, they're not going to give you the credit for it anyway.
Oh no, I get reported 3 times a year for my work in DEI.
Right.
Yeah. So, I know you don't have to do this, and I know that your energy is precious. I just know it's also precious to me, and I'm very grateful that you spent this time with me and talking tonight about pouring into your soul, David. My soul feels very poured into in this moment, and I am so incredibly grateful for all 3 of you and your wisdom and your time and your generosity and your kindness. Thank you. I am touched sort of beyond words. And I hope that this gets some traction on our YouTube channel. I'll make sure to get a link to you. And Marty and David knows this. Usually these turn into an article at some point for me. So you're going to get a publication out of this, all y'all. And
line item.
I wish we could now, the 4 of us, go out and have a little food and celebrate together.
We're gonna come to your house and eat up your food. That's what
Hey, there is an open invitation. I have a suite in my basement that's big enough for all three of you. You come stay and I will cook up a storm.
Love it.
Okay.
All right.
Oh,
Thank you
Thank
for
you for
making
your
this
time.
happen.
thank you,
No.
Gwen. Really.
Thank you all.
Yes, thank you.
And brother, it's such an honor. Thank you. Such
Oh,
a
Pleasure. Yes,
Great being
absolutely.
in your space. Keep up the acts of rebellion, y'all.
Absolutely.
Can eat my fries.
and text me the name of those chips.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm literally with it today. I mean, you know, I've been really focused on what's going in my body, but today,
Practice joy, Marty.
Miss Vicky's
Hey.
dill potato chips got a hold of me. It was just a little small bag, but when I tell you,
They're Haribo gummy bears for me. That's what pours into me. Haribo gummy bears. That's it.
Full size only. Full size only.
You guys are amazing. Thank you for your time. Thank you for filling my soul and making me laugh.
Amen.
That's what we need now more than anything else. So
Mhm.
I respect the
laugh
heck out of you guys.
4 years. We're gonna laugh all the way back to the polls in 4 years. It's fine.